life is this subtle journey, nuanced, where, again, I will challenge anyone listening to this. Where were you 10 years ago? And did you ever believe for a minute that this is exactly what your life would be like right this moment? You have twists and turns, you have off ramps and on ramps, and you think you're going down a path and something happens and it takes you somewhere else.
Welcome to The Change Effect, the podcast that helps you turn life transitions into powerful new beginnings. One story, one shift, one breakthrough at a time. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, leadership coach, and change strategist who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders break through barriers to create success on their own terms. I now work with women to step into change to create a life they love. Whether you're putting yourself at the center of your own story, redefining success, or making a power pivot in your life, career, or business, you're in the right place. Each week, we dive into conversations with trailblazers, changemakers, and everyday women experiencing the ripple effects that come from overcoming the fear and doing it anyway, providing actionable steps, practical strategies, and a whole lot of fun along the way. So if you're ready to step up and become unstoppable, buckle up and let's get started. Some of the most powerful stories in our lives are the ones we do not even realize we're living inside. There are the stories we inherit, the roles we perform, the expectations we absorb, and the quiet definitions of success, belonging, identity, and worth that begin shaping our choices long before we stop to question them. And then sometimes something shifts. The life we built may still work on paper. The titles, relationships, accomplishments, and responsibilities may all still be there. But underneath the surface, a different question begins to emerge. Is this still the story I want to live? My guest today is Carrie KC West, an author and founder of the Rewrite system. Through her work, Carrie helps people recognize the hidden narratives shaping their lives and begin to consciously choose new ones. Carrie is the author of Life Rewritten and Money Rewritten, and her work sits at the intersection of storytelling, reinvention, identity, and personal transformation. In today's conversation, we'll talk about the stories women inherit, the moment those stories begin to feel too small, and what it means to reclaim authorship of what comes next. Because reinvention is not always about becoming someone entirely new. Sometimes it begins with finally telling the truth about the story we no longer want to carry. Carrie, it is wonderful to have you here with us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Noelle. I've been looking forward to this one.
I have too. We have so much to dive into, but I would love to speaking of stories, I would love to get started to hear your story to kind of ground us all in you, and then we can move on from there.
I have so many stories, and people ask me this question, it's like, which one? So let's start at the very beginning, because this is where everybody's stories start, at the very beginning. We start observing and absorbing information the minute we take a breath. The minute we take a breath, it's something that is part of the human condition. It's how we learn. It's how we become a human being. You're born, and because we are the only mammal. Well, not the only mammal, but we are one of the most fragile mammals. There's so many mammals that are born and they can stand up, they can immediately feed, they can immediately do everything. Not us. We need a lot of help and support. So when you're born, we immediately start figuring out what's going on in our environment, and our brain, because we do have the most sophisticated brain, it starts gathering information. Well, if you have a situation like I had, doesn't give you a pretty good head start on life. And what I'm saying is, the day I was born, my mother rejected me in the hospital. Didn't want to hold me, didn't want anything to do with me. But it was at a time when you didn't give kids up for adoption. You had a baby, you dealt with it, you took the baby home. That's what life was. So I had a pretty rough beginning. It was very traumatic. It was very disturbing. So that by the time I got into my 20s, I was not set up for a happy life. I was drinking a lot. I was acting out. I was partying. I did not know how I was going to make it to my 30s. So I said, I better do something about this, because I would get so drunk and drive home from a bar and not remember how I did it. And it wasn't even about me. It was about how I was going to hurt somebody else if I didn't take care of it. Yeah. So I got to work. I hit rock bottom. I said, I got to figure this out. I went to the priest at the church I knew about. I went to therapy. I went to psychiatry. I went to everything. And I rejected psychiatry because they wanted to label me and give me drugs. And I had an aversion to drugs because one of my mom's issues that I later found out was that she was self-medicating and taking drugs from her psychiatric nurse sister, who, at that time, again, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but used to be, instead of having medical commercials, doctors were given tons of samples from drug companies, and then they would distribute them. So my mom's sister worked for a psychiatrist, so she had pockets. She probably had some of the best drugs around. Dude, if we had that today, we'd be rich. I mean, come on.
Right, yeah.
We could sell these things on the street. and so, but I didn't discover a lot of this till later on. But I did have an aversion to taking drugs. I definitely had an aversion to being labeled, but that's what people do. They want to put you in a box and they want to label you, and that's how they treat you. And a doctor, that's how they treat you. And a person, that's how they respond to you. So I tried all of that. And then I got into personal development and growth. I started studying Buddhism and Zen, and then that translated into metaphysics and going to every kind of metaphysical workshop I could find about the meaning of life and why are we here. And it wasn't until, by some stroke of magic, I got accepted at one of the most prestigious film schools in the world, at the American Film Institute. It's a conservatory that's very selective, and somehow, because at that point I didn't think there was anything worth anything about me. I didn't find any kind of feeling of self-worth or value or deservability at all. I didn't have an ounce of self-esteem. I had tons of self-loathing and and self-panic and self-problem, but no self-esteem. And here I get accepted at AFI, and it's like, whoa. Well, in the middle of working on a film project, and we're talking about how a character goes through a journey and why we were interested in that journey and how to take him through it, I was like, oh my God, my life is a story. Not a great story, but if I think it's a story, I'm watching us rewrite these stories before our very eyes all the time. Every day we come in and say, what are today's rewrites? When you get on a set, what are today's rewrites? Because your character develops. Your character, a good character in a story, never stays the same. That's a boring story. Nobody wants to watch that story or read that book. You want a dynamic character that's moving and changing and impacted and has emotions and has responses. And every time I looked at that, I was like, that's life.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's life. And this was even before I realized that there is a branch of psychology called narrative psychology, which is interesting because my undergraduate degree is in psychology and my master's is in storytelling. There's so much more to it, and my journey was definitely one of ups and downs and exits onto a whole different path that I had set up. I did not have a clear path. Like, I never woke up and said, I'm going to be a lawyer and then go and study law, and then you stay a lawyer for, I know some people that have done that, and they're brilliant lawyers. So that's been their whole lifelong thing. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, but what an interesting way to be able to reframe that. How old were you when you really came to that realization? Were you out of college, or was this like later, a little later?
This was in film school. In film school, and I went to film school in my early 30s. So this was probably around 33 that I had this realization.
And think about it. I mean, as we look back in our lives, and everybody is different, obviously, but this different ages where you start to have different realizations of things, and to be able to do that, that's a gift at 33, to actually be able to look at your life as, oh, I can actually kind of look from a further distance away, not being immersed in it, but being able to look at it for what it is, and then being able to kind of say, oh, so this is something I can rewrite. That's huge.
Since I had that realization, I've done so much study and research on how our brain works. And there's a distinction. There's your brain and there's your mind. There's the brain, that's the physical organ that runs all the functions of your body. And then there's your mind. and your mind consists of your subconscious, and there's different experts say unconscious as well, but some say no, unconscious is even separate. But I'm not going to get into that debate. But the mind carries a lot of the memory and the subconscious, and I do say unconscious. But again, any brain specialist watching this, send me a note and tell me your opinion, because I really this I don't think I have a straight answer on where the unconscious lives. But um, your brain is still developing well into your 30s,
Mm-hmm.
and so what that means to me is these experiences we have wire our brains to react in a certain way, and your reactions cause emotions. Your emotions trigger chemicals that work in the brain and wire it. So that is why you seem to always get angry at a certain thing, or you seem to always get sad when this happens, or I can't, for me personally, I cannot watch any videos about animals in shelters because it breaks my heart. Zoos break my heart. My brain is wired to cry and be sad and depressed when I see
Yeah,
this
yeah.
happening. So, so, but so that happens. But the good news is that's a learned behavior. And if you learn it, you can unlearn it and learn something new. So that's the whole
Thank God.
concept of
That's the good news,
that's the whole
right? Yeah.
concept of neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
And some people argue that once you hit X age, you can't do that anymore. I disagree 1000%, because I'm doing it all the time. And I am well past my 40s and 50s. So just so everybody knows, if you can see me, you'll know that I'm probably not in my 30s anymore, but I've been gray since my 20s. I just started to let it come out these last few years.
I love it.
My natural look.
But so this all happens, you're in your early 30s, you get out of film school. What do you do then? Like what do you go into profession wise at this point?
Oh, I went to work in the entertainment industry. I went to work for a famous producer. I worked at MTV. I helped set up MTV Films on the Paramount lot in 1995.
Yeah.
I had the great fun of running into a bunch of A-list celebrities. Some of them were a hoot and a holler. Others were like, "Okay, get over yourself," you know. But
Yeah.
but so I just absolutely cherish that time, because it was fun, and it was a time of great growth, because you really see life being created in action. And we don't notice that in our own lives because we're caught up on the day-to-day chaos, and I got a paper due, or I have a work assignment, or I have something with my relationship. So you don't see the day-to-day creation of this story. It's a
Mm.
fantastic epic we're living every day. So that slowed it down.
I was going to say you were were you on the writing side of it? So you were helping create the story, like in terms of content and things like that?
I did some of it for MTV and for a couple other shows that I did writing for, and I did some smaller scripts, shorts, and that they call interstitials, that I did some writing for. But I realized, excuse me, I realized early on that I wasn't a fan of script writing, because script writing is really about showing. And any good writing shows you. You don't want to tell people. So this is where you feel sad because this little girl is feeling sad because she lost her toy. You want to show the audiences what the experience is and let them find out their own reaction.
So it's more descriptive.
Yeah.
It's more like description of it versus.
Yeah.
So how did this carry into your work? So this realization, which I think is a very liberating one, comes to you, and then you are in the film industry for how many years? I'm just trying to figure out the pivot points in terms of when you kind of
Yeah, no.
reinvented that.
I always say I'm a recovering filmmaker. I actually I still have a toe in it. I invested in a movie that actually went to Cannes this year, so it's kind of like,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of stay with it. And then another director friend of mine here. I live in Santa Barbara, so there's all kinds of celebrities everywhere. And a director friend of mine wants to open a studio here, and he keeps bugging me to help him open the studio. So I toy around with it because it really is a disease once you get into filmmaking. You know, we need our own 12-step program, I swear.
But I think it also speaks to the fact that, like, even as you have moved into what you're doing now, which I know there might be some other pivot points before then, but even as you've done that, there's still remnants of a previous story that can still be a part of it, right? It's kind of that yes and kind of thing. Like, you can have both.
Yes.
So how did that shift for you? Like, was there a moment in time where you were in the film industry and you said, I am, you know what, I'm done with this, I want to move on? Like, how did that all transpire for you?
Well, I was writing one of my first fiction books, and I had interest from a publisher. This was again before the publishing world was completely upended. And because of my connections, I was talking to agents and whatever. So again, a whole different world now. I'm not recommending people do that with their books. I'm also not recommending you just plop a bunch of books on Amazon. But that's not what the purpose is of this this podcast is. Um, anyway, I was taking a master's writers class at UCLA, and somebody wanted some help with the website. Now, when you're a freelancer in the film industry and you're a writer and you're getting your first books done, somebody says, I have some work for you. You just say yes, whether you can do it or not. You say, sure, I can do it. And that turned into a business that I had no intention of ever starting, but it happened. I brought on some people. They created software for this company, and it turned out to be the leading edge of software. And again, I didn't know you weren't supposed to do it that way, so I did it my way. And people started calling saying, "Hey, we want that software you sold Donna." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I didn't. And
That's kind of a nice little happy happenstance.
yeah, which again shows me that life really can be easy and fun, and it's all the mishigosh and our head stories that stop that. But after a couple of years of this, I said, I want to get back to my books. So I said to the people I was working with, do you mind if we sell this or try to bring this about and do something with it? So we sold it. And again, that whole thing turned into another book because the reasons for buying us were never presented. They offered us the world and didn't deliver anything because they had an ulterior motive for buying us, which again is another book that I got to finish The book's written. I just have to get it with a bow tie around it and done. But my life just keeps going off on all these different tangents. So we did that, and then I ended up working in that space for a while and completely got out of the industry for a while. And again, that's where, but underneath it all, I was still developing my self-concept of who I was. And I was doing a lot of inner shifts and a lot of inner transformations, because then somewhere along the way and again, I do think life is pretty cool how it works. Sending me down that path introduced me to the man who would become my partner. Now, because of my issues and my lack of trust and lack of feeling connected to human beings, I didn't date too much. And in fact, I'm still not married, even though Simon and I have been together almost 15 years. We live together. I don't see I'm kind of on a mission to not get married, because that's one of my bugaboos about women's messages that were given from the get-go. So anyway, another story, but that going down that path introduced me to Simon. Simon's British. We stayed friends after we worked on that project. We'd stay in touch because he also wrote a book, and I was finishing up the book that UCLA class sent me to 5 years earlier. So I was finishing up that book, and he was reading it. And then I said, you know what? I'm bored. And I've always had this dream to live in England. England's my place of soul. So I said it to one person, and that night I got a call saying, so-and-so wants to rent out their cottage in England for the summer. You want to take it? And I just said, yes. When you do something like that, I said, yes. Well, it turns out that cottage was the closest village to that cottage was Simon's hometown. So when I called Simon to say I was moving to England for the summer, he said, "Oh, when I'm over there visiting my family, I'll give you a call." Well, to me, England's small, and I wouldn't care if I would have had to go to Scotland from where I was. I would have gotten there. I mean, where I was
Yeah.
staying was about 3 hours away from London, so I get on a train. Trains are really great.
Yeah.
It wasn't a problem. But it turns out he was right where I was. So that was when he
Maybe not such a coincidence, but
well, see,
okay.
this is how, there's these little pebbles of life, and if you follow them. So Simon came over, and then it was like we went out to dinner, and we went, and we've been together ever since.
I love that story. I love that story.
I have never had a boyfriend. I maybe dated a guy for 2 weeks. I never dated, never.
But see, that wasn't your time, right? That wasn't the time for you to do that. That's what I think that's the part that's funny about life, right? We don't get to really write it. Although in a
We
way you
do. We
do.
do.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, not right. Sorry. I mean to say, we don't necessarily get to put all the chapters down on paper, right? Like there are things that evolve, but you also, yeah, I think you are the shepherd of the course of action that gets you there.
I call it inspired actions.
Yes.
Part of this process of clearing out your old story brings you clarity. And when you have clarity, when the old tape loop isn't running, and I challenge anyone who's listening to this to tell me they never have a tape loop running in their head. You never hear it, but there's a tape loop that's constantly saying, "I'm not good enough," or "I have to get this done every day. I'm the responsible one. I'm the one who has to take care of it. It's my job." Those things are going on constantly. When you start waking up to that and acknowledging it and becoming aware of it, it
Mm-hmm.
frees you up to clarity. And when our human mind is in a place of clarity, that's when this inspired actions show up. They show up. They show up all the time, but we're too busy with the mishigosh of our brains.
Yeah.
And honestly, I will have to be very honest. I'm going through that right now. I'm on a threshold of some new things with the work I'm doing. And it's funny how these things are popping up. And for me, inspired action is not just the positives. It's not just the, "Hey, I got a place in London if you want to rent it for a week." Oh, it's not just that. It's also the emotions that come up that you're ready to let go of. It's the guilt, the shames, the angers, the old patterns of hurt. Those are inspired actions too. It because I don't believe that life is meant to be hard, and it's meant to be painful, and it's meant to be scary. I think we make it that way because going back to that very first moment we started taking breath, the people we were with were telling us that life is scary, feel fearful and painful, and not because they're terrible people, but because first of all, they were taught that story, you know, generational. We have all these generational stories, but they also think they're doing a service to protect us. And how many times have mom or dad said, "Well, I just don't want you to be disappointed."
Which even in that sentence though, but even in that sentence, think about that. How loaded that sentence can be, because you can interpret that as like, okay, because you know that I'm not going to be able to do it. I mean, I'm just saying,
Right,
like you can
right,
yeah,
right, right,
totally. Yes,
right.
yes,
And
yes.
also, there's another layer of, well, life is full of disappointments.
Right.
So I want to protect you from the disappointment. So this then ties into, I hope you're following my path here, because those messages then create this story that life is painful, life is scary, you can't trust people, you have to stay in your lane, you can't
Mhm.
talk out, you can't. And then you think you're on this path, then as you get older, as you reach these points where you realize that maybe I need to do something different, which is when the reinvention comes in. you need to see that on a whole, it's this package of this story that keeps us in a box. And when we get ready to step out of that box, those stories get louder because it becomes the familiar pattern in our brains. And our brains want more than anything familiarity and coherence.
And safety, right? Stay put.
Yes,
Safety.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's not because they're bad or wrong. We think we need to be protected and safe.
Yes.
And like I was alluding to before, I'm going through this in my own story now where stuff is coming up and it's like, wow. So that's what I do when I'm getting scared of stepping into the unknown and the uncertain.
Yeah.
And isn't that what reinvention, a lot of people think, that it's unknown and uncertain?
Right. But what I'm curious about, and this is, I mean, we've all lived our lives and we've had these pivotal moments where we've decided to make a change in a course. And I'm familiar with that, what you were just saying about London, like that. I mean, I moved to San Francisco. It was literally over a conversation in my early 20s, and I've lived here for 35 years. Like, it was a conversation at a bar. It was, April in Chicago and still snowing, and we all just were like, let's just go. And I was going to be here for a year. And then so you realize, like, those are the moments where you don't even think. It's like you kind of just let go. But I'm curious because I feel like when people think about reinvention, the thought of it is so daunting, right? Of that idea of like, oh my gosh, that means like I'd have to unearth everything in my, but so can you explain a little bit more about what are those pivotal moments? What are those shifts that can be very subtle? And you mentioned earlier about how relaxing, sometimes when we like let our guard down for a moment is when we can be the most creative. I've experienced that in my life too, right? We're like, whoa, okay, I've actually let go of some things for a minute and then look what happened. So what is that for somebody who really wants that and really is looking to reinvent, but they're kind of stuck in the how? Like, how is that demystified? How do you demystify that process?
At the risk of losing half the audience, I think, and look, I'm a master of reinvention. I have reinvented and continue, and I help clients reinvent all the time. I don't call it that. I don't call it that because
it's a bad word.
No. Oh, no. It's actually the exact right word. The problem is it's fraught with, what does that mean? How do I do it?
And big.
Is there a
Feels
book?
Big.
Is there a book? What steps do I take first? And I was on ABC News in Phoenix a few weeks ago, I don't remember when. And they said, well, where do you start? How do you do this? And it's like, see, this is the risk. So I have
of getting into a to-do list.
Yeah, because it is about how, but it's more about being.
Okay, so here's a better question then that comes to mind. What is important to listen to? What is important to tap into? Like, for somebody who is very tactical, because I have these conversations with clients a lot where it's like everybody wants that to-do list, and you're right. Everybody wants a formula. What's the philosophy? What are the steps I need to take, and how do I get there fast?
Yeah,
right.
Oh yeah, it has to be fast.
This is so internally driven.
Yeah.
Is it more a conversation around being able to recognize your intuition?
No.
And be able to be aware of when that shows up for you?
That second word, aware. Awareness. Yeah. See, every good story has a great ending. So your awareness is, what are you going after? Not what you should be going after, or not what, well, I'm 50 years old. I probably should, do this.
Yeah.
And because we've been given shoulds our whole life, right? You shouldn't, you should. Those are stories. So the first thing I always tell people is 2 levels of awareness. What are you really going for? What will make you happy? What will make you happy? I had this realization the other day, and it's like, writing my books makes me the happiest.
Yeah.
So That's my focus now. Always has
Mm-hmm.
been, but I get sidetracked with all these other things that I enjoy. But
But the beauty in all that, though, I think, Carrie, for you, especially when you're talking about, you feel like you've got energy where you're putting energy into different things. I think that oftentimes, and this is only what I've experienced in people I've worked with, but oftentimes that, like, well, what makes you happy is a really difficult question to answer
well,
for some people.
it,
It really, really
for
is.
everybody. I don't know
Yeah.
anybody who knows right off the top of their head what makes you happy. But
Yeah.
listen, this is a question that's not intended to offer a solution. The intention is to get you thinking, to disrupt the old patterns. And that's the second type of awareness. Awareness of what you're doing now. What are the old patterns that you're doing? What are the old thought patterns? What are the old practices thing that you do in daily life? What are the patterns? What are the always and the nevers? This always happens. That never happens.
Right.
Why do I date the wrong people? Why do I find myself in toxic work situations? Why do I keep getting this event happening? So what are those patterns? And again, asking the happy question isn't to say, I want an answer. It's to say, life is about a journey. It was never meant to be perfect. It was about how we respond to life's imperfections. And when you can make some of those decisions, life is never fair, but life is responsive. And what I mean by that is when you start showing life, you start showing your brain that you're going to go a different way. Your brain will fight you. It will try to rewire you and bring up situations that you think it'll remind you that I'm not going to be able to do this. It's too hard. I don't have the right how to list. I don't have the right textbook. So you have to really work on that urge to go down that path again and work on the biggest how is your awarenesses and then not succumbing to the old reactions. And this is
And recognizing what those might be too, right? Because that's
exactly,
sometimes people
exactly,
start without even knowing that.
exactly.
I always think too, I mean, journaling came into my life when I was a lot younger and truly has gotten me through very, very pivotal moments in my life
Hmm.
and has helped to write things down too, because you
Yes,
don't recognize patterns all the time.
yes.
You just, it's not going
You're
to
in
be
the
a
pattern.
reality all the time for people.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
sometimes I've even said to people, if you're sitting in a movie theater and watching your life on the screen, what is it?
Right.
How about who would play you in the story of your life? That's really telling. Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
that's a good one.
when I've asked people that, I mean, wow. It's sometimes you get character actors and it's like, wow, you don't even see yourself as the star of your own movie. Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
So there's so many techniques, but the other thing I caution people and anyone listening to this, reinvention is not an activity that you set aside that I'm going to reinvent myself and be ready to go by the end of summer.
Right. Right. Yes.
It's not something you say on January 1st. This year I'm going to reinvent myself because you're going to set yourself up for failure. What I would say instead is I want to discover more of who I am and what makes me happy. And
And
that
then let the rest just play itself out.
because isn't that really what reinvention is? You know?
Well, the more we even say the word, the more I feel like it misses the mark a little bit, because reinvention, once again, feels, it has this heaviness to it of like, I am unearthing my entire life. And that's not how life works.
No,
I
no.
mean, it's just not. I mean, we make shifts and we pivot and we move and we flow with the course of our lives, and we go from one destination to the next. So it is more of a journey than anything else. So the reinvention piece, I think, is what can trip people up, because it's like, whoa, that means I've just got to do these. It's not. It could be very subtle
Yeah, and let's
and
face it.
happen over time.
Let's face it. The scariest thing for any human being is the unknown. Second to only uncertainty. Uncertainty and unknown trips you up. When you say reinvention, the first thing you think about is what?
Yeah.
What will happen?
Like, where would I even begin?
Where
Where would I even begin?
and what will happen to my relationships? Will my significant other, will my spouse, will my partner think I've gone off the deep end if I start doing X, Y, or Z? But again, like you were saying, life is this subtle journey, nuanced, where again, I will challenge anyone listening to this. Where were you 10 years ago? And did you ever believe for a minute that this is exactly what your life would be like right this moment? You have twists and turns, you have off ramps and on ramps,
Yes.
and you think you're going down a path and something happens and it takes you somewhere else. There are some people who do the full, I want to be a lawyer, I study law, and I'm a lawyer for the rest of my life. They do that. I know them. They're great people. Some people don't do that. And I do actually have a lawyer friend who decided that she was going to reinvent herself and completely gave up the law and is going off on this whole different path and having a blast. And you can still hear the lawyer in her. She still speaks in legalese, and which is great, because this is the other thing to remember. You always carry all of these other stories with you. Even though I had such a traumatic beginning in life, I can talk about it now, whereas there was a time where it was just riddled with shame and guilt and anger and rage and pain that I couldn't. But it's a part of me, and I celebrate it now. I don't hate
Yeah.
it. It's who I am.
No, and I think that's such a critical point to make, because we
Yes.
are a sum
Yes.
of all the parts, right? We're kind of,
Yes.
we're all of it,
Yes.
and the good, bad, and the ugly. But that wouldn't. I remember I had a coach of mine say to me once, "You are exactly where you're supposed to be right now in this moment, and all of the things that have happened before now have brought you to this place." And it just like made me think, oh, wow. Like, it's an interesting perspective. What's coming up for you now with your work and kind of what you're offering to recreating stories?
As you said, because people want to process in a system, I came up with the life rewrite system. And it can be self-paced, or you can do it with me, or you can do it with a cohort I'm putting together. But I'm working with people to actually have these lasting changes. Now, lasting change takes time. I've been, again, studying psychology and talking to
Mhm.
some of my brain friends, and there's no question that 21 days, 90 days is not enough to see lasting change. This has to be a commitment to a process, and then once you complete that process, stay on the journey to transform and make sure these transformations stick. Because even with all mine, I still get that yada yada. I can handle it better than I ever did, but it comes up.
Yeah, yeah. We're
Hello,
human. I mean,
hello.
that's
That's
the way it
that's
works,
that's
right?
what we are as humans. So my life rewrite system, you can do it self-paced or with me. And I just love it when I just see that awareness shift in your eyes. There's nothing like it, because I really believe, and especially women, we didn't even get to talk about how the stories women are given even before they're born. The pinks and the little ladies and the Barbie dolls they all buy for you. It's like, okay.
Yeah. But it does make you realize that, I mean, we are made up of a lot of complex things, and some of that are the myths that we've been
Yep.
told since we were really, really little. And
Yeah.
how do we
Yeah.
unwind some of that to get to a place where we know we're going to be able to live our lives? We're going to be able to rewrite something that is ours to rewrite. I just think that's a really powerful thought, that a lot of people, I think by and large, a lot of us feel like, well, I mean, this is kind of the life I've been given. So like, and it's just such a passive. When I tell people
Yes.
that we have the power to create the life we want to create, and I mean that, and I viscerally feel it, I sometimes kind of get a side eye of like, well, what exactly do you mean by that? You know what I mean?
No, exactly. Because authorship. This is ours to create, and that's where, for me right now, a lot of the work is with your identity, because your identity is where you hold on to, well, that's my life. And that's when the brain starts working. You go, well, maybe it really is my life, and all this authorship crap is crap. And it's very seductive when your brain says, no, I'm in charge here, I'm going to do this. But your mind says, hold on, this is how you can bring your brain and your mind together. I mean, I've seen so many people do it, and it's beautiful and it sticks. And this is a movement I'm starting in, and especially with women, to help each other, help each other. Because if we have a network of support, and also I believe, what is the 12 monkey rule? When as more people know this, or when you did the Rubik's cube, it took years, but then one person solved the cube, and then everybody started solving it. Do you remember that?
No. Is it like some sort
Well,
of
it's
tipping point or some
yeah,
sort
it's
of,
a tipping point.
yeah.
So it's in this. This is the unconscious mind that we're all a part of. So I
Mm-hmm.
really believe this movement, if we can get women to start seeing that story and start shifting it for themselves, and embracing, again, so many times we think as leaders, the examples we have of leadership come from men.
Mm-hmm.
Women are now starting to find their view of leadership, and
Yes.
it's different. And
Yes.
as more women start embracing that view of leadership, it's going to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's what I'm about right now, Noelle. I want to, and any woman listening to this, join me in
Yeah.
this, because we can author a whole new world. I think we're being called to do that anyway with all the stuff going on.
I think you're right. I think this is a very pivotal time in history that says a lot
Yeah,
to us to
yeah,
get moving, right?
yes, yes,
Oh, Carrie, you and I could talk for hours, as we have said
yes.
before. But this was such a good conversation, because I think that it has stirred in me, and I hope that it stirs in listeners just kind of a thought about what that's all about, and explore that a little bit. Even if it's something that's an inkling of a thought of like, wow, there might be some shifts that I could make. It doesn't have to be drastic, right? That's what we're saying. It can be very subtle, very subtle.
If you are going down a path and you make a little subtle shift, it might look like nothing now, but as you keep going, it diverges off. And you don't know where it's going to take you. Like I said, I
Right.
cannot believe I'm living in a beautiful home in Santa Barbara, and have so much success and abundance that as a child in that traumatic time I never thought would happen. And
Yeah.
now I'm doing more to help people than I ever thought. But I'd love to come back if you're open to it, Noelle, because I think there's
Yes,
so much more to
absolutely.
have on this conversation.
Yes, we need to continue this dialogue, because it's very important, I think, and it is the start of something a lot bigger. So I totally agree. Carrie,
Good.
thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful. It's been wonderful to meet you, because we are on the same, I mean, I think we're on the same wavelength in a lot of ways. But anyways, we're going to put all of Carrie's links in the show notes too, so anybody can find her if they are interested in reaching out. And Carrie, thank you again. It was such a pleasure.
Oh, all pleasure was all mine. This is amazing. And I'm truly, truly excited to get to know you even more.
Yes, for sure. Okay, that's it for now. Until next time. Thank you for listening to The Change Effect. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode, so more women like you can find us and take their next step toward creating a life they love.